Hi, I'm Michelle the Irritable Vegan, and today I'm going to be walking you through a typical day of eating to show you how I plan and prep my meals to get the most diversity and variety of plant foods into my diet. I'll explain in detail the choices that I'm making as I go along, and I'll show you how you can do the same to keep things low FODMAP and gut friendly. So let's get started with breakfast. Today for me that's going to be porridge. Now porridge oats contain both FOS and GOS, which can make them a little bit tricky deciding what to eat them with, but I actually only enjoy a really small portion. So for me, I'm actually only going to be having half a portion of FOS and GOS with the amount that I'm eating. That then opens it up for me to be able to add in things such as flaxseed, which contains GOS, and that will be one whole portion of GOS. So to keep within FODMAP safe guidelines, roughly 1.5 portions of each FODMAP type is acceptable per meal. So we'll have half a portion of GOS within the oats and then a full portion of GOS with the flax seeds. So that's already 2 plant points there. I can also then add in a nut, which are usually FOS or GOS containing. So because we've got one full portion of GOS with the flax seeds, I'm going to go for a nut that contains FOS. So that could either be pecans or walnuts, and I just have one portion of either of those. So what we could do is if we're meal prepping and making for multiple days, then rather than pop one of these into the full batch of porridge, which would then mean that we would have to eat this one plant day after day after day for however many days we made the porridge for. What we're going to do instead is make a batch of the porridge on its own. We will include the flax seed just because it helps to thicken up and I like it to be soaked within the porridge. But then one day we'll have the pecans, and then the next day we'll have the walnuts. So already there we've split what would have been one plant point if we'd have added it into both portions of the porridge. We've now added a second plant point in by adding the nuts separately on each individual day. So just thinking ahead for little things like that. It does mean that you can still do this whilst you're doing a meal plan. You can still prep ahead in bulk. It's just thinking about things differently so that you're not adding in the things that could be giving you a bit more variety throughout the week. I'm also going to add some peanut butter, and this is fructose containing. I'll just be adding in half a portion of this, so that's half a portion of fructose. I'm going to add in some mandarins, which are FODMAP safe. These are canned mandarins, feel free to add in fresh if you prefer. I do assume that because these are packed in juice, these will be free as well. That may not be the case. If you are in elimination, just see how you go with canned fruit. But because we've only used half a portion of fructose with the peanut butter, then it would also be safe to add in another fructose containing ingredients, something such as grapes or strawberries if you didn't want the mandarins, or for somebody like me who is a little bit more free and loose with what I eat and I don't really abide by the FODMAP guidelines anymore. So I would probably put that in the porridge to make a really nice orangey porridge. And I'd probably also have an extra plant point by adding in one of these, which would still theoretically keep me in FODMAP safe limits. But I know that some people prefer to only eat one portion of fruit at a time, especially in the elimination phase. So that would be entirely up to you and your tolerances and how comfortable you feel. I'll also be adding in some mixed spice, and I won't generally include this as a plant point because I'll be adding it in such small quantities. So all I need to do is grab my milk. I use chocolate milk because I can't really eat porridge unless it tastes like a dessert. So that's what I'll be using, and then I'm going to show you how we bring all of this together. So just a little note about the milk. I'm going with a soya-based plant protein. This specific one wouldn't be suitable for the low FODMAP elimination phase because it does use whole soya beans. But just to point out that even though this is made from soya, so theoretically it is a separate plant to everything else that we've got going on here, just because of the process nature of it, I wouldn't necessarily count this as an extra plant point. It's got the cocoa in, it's got sugar, so this for me wouldn't be considered a full plant point. That's not to say that there's anything wrong with it, that there's anything bad with it, but just purely in terms of trying to get the best possible variety of fibre and plants into the diet, for me something like this wouldn't count. I do eat soy-based products such as tofu and edamame, and I'd much rather count the plant point from something like that through the week used in a salad or a main meal, rather than trying to scrimp a little plant point out from something like this. So bearing in mind that I'm making enough today for today and tomorrow, I'll just show you. I'll be using half a cup of the oats, which when divided between today and tomorrow, that will then make half a portion per day. Into this I'm going to add flax seeds, and I will be eating these on both days, so I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of that. The mixed spice is just purely for my flavour preference. That doesn't add anything other than flavour. We won't be counting any points from that. I'll start with 1.5 cups of the milk and see how we go. I'm going to add in half the can of mandarins without the juice. If you preferred, you could add in your fruits at the end one by one, just so that you're keeping it to 1 fruit portion per day. So I've got a real kind of chocolate orange dessert vibe going on here, which is exactly how I like my porridge. Now that the milk's heated up, I'm going to add 2 spoons of peanut butter, which across the 2 days is half a portion. And I'm going to leave that to bubble away now while I just chop the pecans. I'm going to guesstimate, but obviously if you're in the low FODMAP elimination phase, then feel free to weigh those out. I'm just going to chop these in, and these are going to go really nicely with that chocolate, with the orange, with the mixed spice. And in the past, when I'm not thinking particularly about how many plants I'm getting in, I would probably have just chopped in enough pecans for however many days I was planning on eating the porridge and not really thought about it. But now, when I'm trying to be a bit more conscious about adding in those extra points, I'll be adding these pecans just to today's portion, and then for tomorrow I'll be able to get an extra plant point by adding in the walnuts. So it really is just about making these small little changes, these small little shifts to your habit, and just trying to think every day, what can I add, what can I add? So this is looking about right for me now, and actually looking at this portion now it's here in the pan, this is probably enough for me for 3 days, because I really do only like a really small amount of porridge. So I'm well within any limits of the low FODMAP elimination phase if we're dividing this whole batch by 3. So let's get it dished up and see how it all looks. And that's probably about a generous third of the portion that we've just made. I'm realising now I won't need all of these pecans. And because I'm free and easy with my FODMAPs, I will be adding in some of these black grapes. In case you weren't aware, the low FODMAP elimination safe portion now for grapes is actually 6 grapes. That changed last year. Unfortunately, they've changed from eat freely according to appetite. They have now tested high for fructose. So you would be looking at about that much for a portion if you're still in the low FODMAP elimination phase. I'm not, so I could add in as much as I want, but that probably is about enough for me. And I also like to chop them just so that I get more in every bite. So there we are, we've got a delicious, hearty, filling breakfast, plenty of plant points. If you are sticking to FODMAP elimination guidelines, this would be 5 plant points, 1 for the oats, 1 for the flax, 1 for the peanut butter, 1 for the mandarin and 1 for the pecans, and we probably wouldn't add the additional extra grapes on. I have, so this is actually a 6 plant point meal for me, but we will count it as 5 just for the purpose of this video. If you've meal prepped a certain number of portions of the same meal throughout the week, you will be eating that and repeating those plant points, so you won't be counting those every day, but just looking for these little swaps, it does make a difference to be able to just add in 1 extra plant each day that maybe you didn't add in the day before. So for example, for me that could be replacing the pecans with walnuts, and I could also replace the grapes with strawberries tomorrow, so that would be another additional plant point. So I hope this has given you some ideas for how you could possibly see this working for yourself, and also how you can see that even if you're still doing the low FODMAP elimination phase, you can get a surprising amount of variety and plants into each meal of the day. I'm going to tuck into this now and I'll see you again for lunch. So for lunchtime I've got something that's really typical for me, leftovers. And this is just to show that you don't have to be cooking from scratch every single day. You don't have to be eating only fresh foods. You can make this convenient for yourself and still make it work. So in here I've just got some leftover curry, and this is just a packet rice. This is a white rice, but obviously you can replace this with brown. And the curry itself, in the curry we've got Japanese pumpkin, sweet potato, carrots, courgette, kale, bell peppers, and I've got a little bit of onion in there. Obviously you wouldn't include that if you were still low FODMAP. And this for me is just a classic lunch, as I'm sure it is for many of you. It's nice and easy, you can throw it in your bag, take it to work, and it's fantastic as it is. It's already got all those veggies in there, but that doesn't mean that we can't improve upon it, and that's where these come in. Now here I've got a couple of tablespoons of coconut yogurt. I personally wouldn't count this as one of my 30 plant foods, just because it is pretty processed, but it's the stuff that we're going to add to it that will count. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grate up this bit of cucumber. It's pretty much worse for wear, but once we grate it into there, nobody's going to know any different. And I'll be using some green ends of these spring onions. If I had some fresh mint, I'd use a handful of fresh mint as well. That could also be counted, but I'm just going to use a little bit of dried mint today because I'm going to be using a little pinch of that. I won't be counting that. And once we give that a nice mix up, that's actually going to be a dressing for on top of the leftovers. So just because we're eating leftovers, it doesn't mean that we can't look to see where we can possibly add in any more things to give it that little bit of a boost. Another thing I'm going to add is a 1/4 cup of chickpeas. So these are going to add a nice boost of protein, and they'll also be counted as an extra plant. So you can begin to see how we can start to pimp up those leftovers, pimp up those ready meals. It doesn't have to all be done straight from scratch. We can always look to see what can I add, what more, and that's really the way that you're really going to do this. Every time you're plating up, just think, what else can I add? So I'm just going to use some of the ends here of these green onions, just for FODMAP's sake. If I'm being honest, at this point in my journey, I would use the entire onion. And then I'm going to grate the cucumber. I'm probably only going to do about half that. I'll use the other half in something else later. Now this is just enough to garnish for one meal, but you can see that if we were doing this day in, day out, how all these little amounts would eventually add up. So, now into that I'm just going to add some dried mint. I would prefer fresh, but I don't have any to hand. A tiny smidge of black salt, just to give it that little bit of oomph. And some different peppercorns, coriander seed and spices. And there's our dressing done. So I'm going to add that curry and rice into the pot, sprinkle in those chickpeas, and just because I want to go the extra mile and show you exactly how many things you can add into a meal to give it that extra plant point, I'm going to be using some of these sushi nori sheets, and I'm actually going to use these like a little wrap. So I'm just going to cut them up the centre, I'm going to chop them in half and then chop each half again. So I've got 8 of these little squares. These are going to be like little mini mouthful wraps, and let's show you how we do that. And that's quite a small lunch portion for me. This was just to show that I was using up leftovers, using up what I had in the house. This isn't representative of a typical low FODMAP portion. I just wanted to point that out. So let's throw this on there. And just to boost those points one more time, I'm just going to sprinkle over some sesame seeds. So there you have a quick, easy, delicious lunch. There's 12 plant points in there. That doesn't include the fact that I've got onion in, so there's actually 13. And I really hope that's shown you how quick, easy and simple it can be to get your points in. Now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of this, pop it into there, fold that up like a little mini burrito and pop it in my gob. So for tea tonight it's salad. My salads always start a huge bowl. I hate it when you get a salad and all the bits have dropped to the bottom and you're just eating forkfuls of lettuce. So I really like to be able to mix everything up, all mixed in really well, so that I'm getting a forkful of everything in every single bite. And I make the salad directly into the bowl, I toss it in the bowl, and I generally eat it straight from the bowl just to save some washing up. So for anyone that doesn't know, I no longer eat a low FODMAP diet or restrict my portion sizes, but I just wanted to be clear that things like this, the avocado, the plum tomatoes, the celery, the lentils, all of these do have FODMAP safe servings listed in the Monash app, so we are going to still count them as plant points. I just want you to be aware that I'm going to be eating to my tolerance and to my appetite, not to the portion sizes within the Monash app. So please do make sure that you're double checking those. So without weighing it, that's roughly a low FODMAP portion of celery, but I'm going to keep going for me. Next, I'm going in with radish. These are FODMAP free. And again, this is for my appetite and tolerances. I'm going to go in with a big handful of rocket, and I just tend to use my hands. The same with the lettuce. I love these little innards of the lettuce, the little coarse parts, perfect for salad. And I like to leave the big leafy ones for sandwiches or for using as like lettuce wraps and lettuce cups. And it's already pretty easy to see why the big bowl was a good option. We're probably only about halfway there so far, and this bowl's already about halfway full. You can see there's plenty of room in there to give everything a good mix up. Next up is the avocado. This is a really small avocado, and typically I'll use anywhere between half to a whole. That's quite a big core in there, so I'll probably use the whole of that. If you're looking for a FODMAP safe portion, you'll probably be looking at something like that. You can see compared to my hand, I have small hands. And I just scoop that into that. And last but not least, for the salad greens, I've left these green onions towards the end because these don't count, because if you remember we had these with lunch, so we've already counted these with lunch, but I do like them in a salad as well. So this is at the point where you start seeing that you can start off really well, maybe at the beginning of the week or even earlier in the day, but then your foods will start to repeat, and that's just perfectly normal. If you're buying a certain amount of food, you're going to be eating those same ingredients throughout the week to make sure that you're minimising your food waste. So there's no issue at all with repeating foods in the same week or even in the same day. It's just that they don't get counted towards your plant point tally. And there's that little nub of cucumber that I had left as well. I'm actually going to chop that up. Probably between this and the portion that we had this afternoon for lunch, that probably does equate to one serving. Between them, we've made up another plant point, which is exactly how you do things on the low FODMAP diet, particularly when you're looking at using quite small quantities of things, say for example the avocado. It may not necessarily be a plant point because of the small quantity that you would eat, but over the course of a week, if you then ate that same food again and again and again, every day or every other day, that adds up to a full point. So that's it for all the salad greens. The only other thing I need to add to this is my homemade sauerkraut. And again, you really don't need much of this. I think the safe serving in the FODMAP app is quite small. is just a fantastic little garnish to add. It's got so much good gut bacteria in there. It's homemade, it's delicious, adds a lovely pop of colour, and it's an extra plant point. Now I eat main meal salads at least a couple of times a week, usually once as an evening meal and could be 2 or 3 times as a lunch. That's in all weathers, even in winter. I just make sure that I add some warm elements into them. So in order to be able to do that, I need to know that this is going to be filling, it's going to be satisfying, it's going to be full of protein, and it's going to give me everything I need. So I always make sure I've got some decent protein and some decent carbs in there. I would never just eat a salad like this. That to me is a side salad. To make that a meal, we need to add in some protein and carbs. So for me, we've got a holiday coming up, I've got lots of work to complete, so we're having a quick and easy meal week, which again is what I want to show you, that it doesn't have to be difficult. So I've got absolutely no shame in using pre-packed foods like this if they're going to give me the protein and a filling, nutritious, delicious meal. No shame whatsoever. Obviously, if you're in the low FODMAP elimination phase, then something like this won't be suitable because this will have garlic and onion in there. But these can very easily be swapped out just for plain canned lentils. No problem with that. So you will still get your plant point from adding in a bean or legume or something like that. Another great tip is to look for things that are more than what they appear. So rather than just grabbing a packet of rice, I actually picked up this 5 whole grains. Now in this, it has got rice, which we won't be counting because we counted that at lunchtime, but it's also got cooked pearl barley, cooked red quinoa, cooked wild rice, and millet in there. So that's a 5 grain pack. So that is a fantastic way to get a few extra plant points into your meal. So what should be 1 grain, if we were just eating that as rice or quinoa, has actually now turned into 5 plant points, which is something that you really should be looking out for if you are consciously trying to increase your plant points per meal. So I'm really sorry I forgot to hit record, but I've just popped in there about 1/3 of a cup of those lentils and about a heaped 1/2 cup of the mixed grains, and now this is the good bit. If you can manage to get at least 1 or 2 salads like this into your meals every week, then you're definitely going to be on track for your 30 plant points. So there we have it. How delicious does that look? That has got an amazing 12 plant points because we've subtracted the rice, which we added at lunchtime, and the green onions. So altogether there's actually 14 plant points in there, but we've already eaten 2 of those plants earlier in the day, so we're going to subtract those, and we've got a 12-point plant meal right there. The only thing left to do now is tuck in. So I really hope you found that helpful to see the mindful tweaks, choices and food selections that are made throughout the course of the day. Now if you're watching closely, you'll realise that I actually hit over 30 plants in a single day. Now that might not be conceivable or doable for you, but I really hope it's inspired you to start thinking about the little ways that you can gradually begin incorporating more plant foods into your diet day to day. As always, I'd love to continue the conversation in the comments below, and I appreciate any action that you take on this video to help boost its rankings and visibility. That includes a like, a comment, a share, or simply watching through right until the end. Let me know how many plant foods you managed to eat this week, and I'll speak to you soon.